Hey, everybody. I'm super excited to be here with Nick Jackson, known also as Nick the Immunologist, to talk about his research and learn more about immunology and the exciting and things that he is studying. So, Nick, welcome. Hi.
Yes, thank you for having me. This is wonderful. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So you are a man of science. Tell us. I have some background about what you're doing, but I think it's probably better for it to come from you in your words. So
Yeah,
tell us a
yes.
bit about your research, where you're studying, your
Um,
background.
yeah, absolutely. So my name is Nick. Like I said, I'm a PhD student, a PhD candidate at St. Louis University in St. Louis. I'm a seventh year PhD student or PhD candidate. So I've been a part of the program for quite some time. Hoping to graduate within the next year. So it's been a
Fingers
fun
crossed.
journey. Fingers crossed. Um, I study autoimmune diseases, specifically looking at therapeutic that our lab is had a collaboration with a biopharma company out in Boston. Developed this therapeutic, ideally to help enhance the number and function of regulatory T cells, which is a type of T cell used to suppress your other immune cells in order to prevent autoimmune disease. And so my project is testing this and trying to see if I can suppress autoimmune disease with the therapeutic and exactly how does this therapeutic work. And ideally with the information that I have in my thesis project, we're translated to what the company wants to eventually use for a clinical trial for this therapeutic. So that's a little bit of background of what I do with my research. I did undergrad at University of Missouri in Columbia. I studied biochemistry. It's my undergrad, a bachelor's of science in biochemistry. Um, I started doing research in undergrad. That's where I really learned what research was through a program in undergrad that helped me get into a research lab and show me what it meant to do research. Allowed me to attend conferences, to present my work and all of that. And then eventually the program also helped push minority students into applying for PhD programs. And so that's kind of how I got here. So that's the start of my research career. When I got to grad school, the program was a umbrella program. So it had back then it was four different departments. There was a biochemistry department, pharmacology and physiology department, pathology department, and then a molecular microbiology and immunology department. And in your first year in the program, you would take classes that consisted of those four different departments, and then also do lab rotations, which was a 6-week period
Oh, cool.
where you test out basically which mentors and what science and research you enjoyed. And then at the end of the year, you would pick one of those labs that you did a rotation in, and that would be the lab you join for the remainder of your grad school program. And so my very last rotation was in the immunology department. I never knew anything about immunology before. I never thought I'd be an immunologist. But I enjoyed the mentors' work. And all my other options just it didn't really work out that great, and I didn't really resonate with anyone else at the university's work. So for me, if it was go big or go home. If it didn't work out with this last rotation I did, I would have dropped out of grad school. But it ended up working out. Here I am, 6 years later, still in grad school.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. And I had to give you props because I think I may have told you this. So when I was in school, I had studied neurology and I was, for me, the microbiology, the cell biology, really getting into the weeds with that was my downfall. I give you anybody who is in this field like you, I give so much
Mm,
credit to because I could not wrap my head around it. I thought I understood it, but apparently I didn't. Like on exam time, and so
mm,
I
yeah.
absolutely love.
Yeah, I was definitely diving into the deep end because my undergrad degree biochemistry was really hard for me. Like I when they say C's get degrees, I was skating by on a lot of things. But when I got to grad school, I didn't like not knowing anything about immunology was a huge leap of faith. Like it was just like, I'm just going to test it out, see what happens. It was a science I never really heard of. I didn't know what it was about. I didn't know how it worked. But when I started learning and like once I started taking classes within my department, that was the first time ever for me, really, that science just started to click fully. Like it made sense of why
Mm,
these things happened the way they did. Whereas, like in my biochem classes in undergrad, I never fully understood why we were learning those things. It just felt like, here's something you got to memorize, just memorize.
memorizing.
Exactly.
Yes.
So I finally felt like I was learning something that wasn't just like, it wasn't just like memorize it, but also ask why it works that way. And that was the first time I realized, oh, this is what getting a PhD is. It's like, it's not just knowing it, but like everybody here is always going to ask you why. And if you don't know
Right.
why, you got to go figure it out. So
Do you think it's because you had an interest in this subject too? Do you think that kind of just brought it together for you, or is it just more, or was it like that why factor?
I don't really, I don't think I've had an interest really because it's hard to say when it was something I didn't know too much about, but I knew I liked science. And it was like science was always the subjects I was best at. But as a kid, I
Mm.
wanted to be a forensic scientist. So it's completely,
Okay.
different field entirely. And then eventually over time, like life events and life things happen that pushed me more towards wanting to have a more medical focus. But I didn't want to be a medical doctor. And so I figured my way to kind of help people is to like basically develop drugs. So when I started grad school, the only thing I knew was pharmacology, physiology was very much like design drugs and then push those drugs out to market for, and I thought that's what that was. And so that's originally what I wanted to do when I first got to grad school. And I was
Okay.
already like talking to people about joining the pharm phys department and being a part of that part of the program. But my experience is the one guy I wanted to work for, he didn't have funding to take me. And so I had to find an alternative. I didn't like any of the other researchers. And in my first year of classes, I hated the courses. It was one of like farm phys made me mad to be in grad school, honestly. So uh, I know hate to the farm phys people. It just didn't resonate with me. Um, and so that's when I took the leap of faith of just saying, I have nothing, I don't know anything about immunology. And in that first year of courses, we only did it for 1 week. So I barely got any information about it. But the research that I did in my rotation was just so much, it was just so interesting to me. And the mentor I felt like really was somebody who I thought could push me to be the best version of myself in grad school. So that combination of things it just made me say, worst case scenario, I drop out later. Best case scenario, I get a PhD. So, why not go for it?
It's funny. Like it's like doesn't matter what field you're in, business, science, school. It really is just all about the teachers and the leaders really bringing it out, isn't it? It's really
Yeah.
incredible. Well,
I
somebody
can't,
can just really motivate you.
I can't stress how much the mentor matters more than the work. You're never going to love some people even grow to hate the things they thought they loved because of a
Sure.
bad mentor. So that matters to me. I think it's more important than the work itself because that's what really guides you towards the proper training and actually loving what you do is having somebody pour into you the knowledge that you needed, you know?
Yeah. Absolutely. Wow. That's incredible. Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. I do wonder if, I had some, throughout high school or elementary school and middle school and whatnot. There are some like maybe not elementary, but there were some standout teachers, which is what I think pushed me into science. And I always wondered, if in college, had there been somebody who had made the subject interesting, because I found that I thought I loved science and I still love science from an amateur, more high level, I guess, like perspective. But I always wondered if I would have did more with it, because I always thought that I would stick with science too. And, it's amazing that you found somebody and that now you're pursuing that. Let's see, we had somebody in the chat. Yeah, 100%. So Aramato said, mentors help you build on your passion so it doesn't feel like work all the time. Totally agree. Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
100%. Yeah. So so the study itself. So about autoimmune disease. So if this works, are there specific autoimmune diseases that the drug is looking to target? Is it more of like an umbrella type of a thing?
That's a good question. It's
Mhm.
ideally the way it will work is very specific. It's not very specific. So um, there's a and this is published on their website. The design of the molecule, and I present on this. This thing is specifically two proteins. They're called cytokines, IL-2, TGF beta. And it's already been proven that if you take a regular not T cell that hasn't been prepared to target anything, so call it naive T cell, and you provided this IL-2 protein, the cytokine, and this TGF beta in a well, like in a petri dish kind of setting, you can make it become a Treg. You can force its path toward the Treg T cell. And then you can actually, what people are testing, and I think phase 1 clinical trials right now, is that you can take cells out of someone's body. You can separate all the cells you don't want, just get those naive T cells, and then provide them IL-2 and TGF beta and make them become Tregs. And then you can put those cells back into someone's body, say someone who has type 1 diabetes. And then these T cells reinfused into their body, now specifically being Treg, can then ideally suppress their type 1 diabetes or lupus or multiple sclerosis or rheumatoid arthritis, any autoimmune disease you could think of. That's the role that they would typically play. And all you're doing there is you're just swinging the balance. So the ideally, it's thought of that someone who has an autoimmune disease probably has Tregs that they have less Tregs than normal, or they have Tregs
Right.
that don't work as well. So what you do
Okay.
is you basically take their cells and give them more Tregs than normal, or Tregs that work better. And then it should suppress this autoimmune disease they have. All my therapeutic does is that IL-2 and that TGF beta, you have to give it to them you have to do it inside of a petri dish in a lab and then give those cells back to somebody. It's impossible to make sure those two proteins act inside the body on the same cell. So there's no
Okay.
therapeutic that can treat people directly with it. So the
Okay.
therapy of the adoptive
So
transfer.
it's not just being injected and finding the right ones and doing it. You have
Mhm.
to, are you
Exactly.
taking their blood and kind of matching it up and then putting it back in?
Yeah.
Does that
So
make it
ideally,
or
yeah, like the simplified version is you would take their blood, get the cells you want, grow them up, and then put them back in. Now, that's not
okay.
a cheap thing to do. It's not cheap. It's not the easiest procedure. And there's no guarantee it's really going to work. But with my studies, all I'm doing is taking out the middleman. So what instead of providing IL-2 and TGF-beta separately, the molecule just puts them together, and then I can inject it inside of somebody. So instead of going through the whole process of taking their blood, isolating the cells out you want, providing all these cytokines, then growing up the cells and then putting them back in. And it takes, 3 to 7 days to grow up all these cells. So we're looking at a week, 2 weeks before you even have all the cells you need. And then infusing them back into the patient. And then waiting another several weeks to see if those cells even work to fight off the disease. I'm skipping all of that by just giving it directly into a person as like an injection. And then it would act, hopefully, this is what I'm testing, on the T cells that need to become Tregs inside someone's body. And then those will grow up in their body and then fight off the disease. So
Oh, wow.
it basically cuts out all the extra steps of taking their cells, taking their blood, getting the cells you want in the lab, growing them up in the lab, all that. You just do it right inside the body. Now, my project comes for in mice, I'm testing, does it actually act on the cells I want? Does it actually grow them up to be Tregs? Do these Tregs actually suppress autoimmune disease? And then how long does this drug last in the body? How toxic is it? All those different things.
Sure. Side effects,
And
of course.
side effects, other off-target effects from other cells that can bind to it, all kind of stuff like that is what I'm testing. And then ideally, once I accumulated enough information to show that the drug is or is not effective, then I would write a paper on it because their company wants solid scientific evidence to show for it. And also I need to publish a first author paper to graduate. So that's my last hurdle. Um, but I have really good data, and it's very promising on how effective this drug might be. Um, and then from my studies in mice, eventually the company would make transitions to make it usable in humans if we can prove that it works in animals. And then they'd eventually want to enter into phase 1 trials. So it's kind of like my work is a starting point for the desirability to follow this therapeutic for further analysis, you know, especially
Wow.
if we want to do it again. So,
So when do you estimate that you'll be able to put this together and defend your thesis?
I'm getting towards the end. I just finished up
Mhm.
some big experiments that would go into my paper. Um, so my guess is I would probably be done with the paper sometime between now and August, and my thesis sometime between now and December.
Well,
So hopefully within the next year, I'll be Dr. Nick Immunologist. So uh, yeah,
exciting.
and it's crazy because full circle, my whole desire was to develop or work on drugs and therapeutics that can help people, combat different diseases. And as a kid, I had no idea what that meant. Like I was a high school kid going to college with this idea, and really stemmed from, I went through some very tough things as a kid. My father passed away from asthma attack when I was in high school, and I really wanted to be somebody who could help people so they didn't have to experience the things that I went through as a kid. And that's what really drove my career. That's why I said I drove away from forensic scientist to now wanting to be a researcher because of life events for me. But I also hated medical doctors through that. I don't hate medical doctors anymore. But I was a kid and my experience with them then was not great. So I never wanted to be a medical doctor. But I wanted to find a way to still contribute to science and help people. And I say, your um, your dreams that you have or your visions that you have manifest, but it may take a lot of time. And a lot of people lose track of that because they forget how much time it could take. But the things that I wanted to do when I was 16, I'm doing at 30 years old now. And it's just crazy to see how full circle all of this has come. And it happened so slowly that I almost forgot that was my dream as a high school kid. Like that's what I wanted to do. And now I'm actually doing it. And sometimes I forget to appreciate that 16-year-old me is now living the dream that I've always dreamed of, 15 years later, so.
I love that. That's so wonderful, especially over time. And that's so many people just like change and like so many things happen like in and out, and it's amazing when you can actually take that dream and do something to make it come to fruition. I mean, kudos to you. I can't wait to see the doctor in front of your name. I'm gonna follow up.
Yes, yes. Mhm.
So so once all this is over, what's next? Are you planning to continue with actually bringing this drug to life? Is it like, do you want to kind of continue on this path or?
That's a good question for this project specifically. At least for
Yeah.
me now, I think once I finish my part, I'm probably gonna be done with it. Once I finish and defend my dissertation, I'll probably keep up with it, see what the company's doing on their end. I know they have a lot of phenomenal work that they're doing. And then my mentor, if he decides to do, I know he wants to do some more work with it as well eventually. But in terms of my own career, it's been a bit of a battle to figure out what I want to do after. I used to tell myself I never wanted to be a professor. I didn't want to go down that whole like academic run your own lab and teach kind of thing. Um, Part of me wanted to work for, pharmaceutical companies because I thought that was the path that I would lead down. And then also, there's a difference in like the academia versus the industry aspects of the careers in my field, where the academia side usually is more security in jobs, but less, pay for yourself.
Mhm.
Whereas the industry jobs higher pay, but less job security. And I have over time gotten to a point where the money is kind of mattering more to me than the other aspects. Um, and so I wanted to do industry. But as I get older, I think a lot of that is starting to change for me as well. Where I one, there's just so much uncertainty in the science world right now in terms of what jobs are available or what things can pursue, people can pursue, what funding is even going to be available for different jobs.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very hard right now to make solid decisions. But also, and people have told me this well before I even started posting on social media. Like people have always said that they
Mm-hmm.
feel like I'll be a good teacher,
Uh-huh.
and they could see me teaching or educating people. And I always just kind of like fought it off and was like, I don't know about that. But I do think, especially with posting more online and social media, that I find myself feeling more comfortable educating and teaching and helping people understand and learn things. So there might be something there for me, in some way, shape, or form. Um, I've always told myself what makes me feel comfortable with trying to put out educational content on social media is I
Mm-hmm.
am not someone who likes to handhold people through things. I only want to teach people who want to be there and learn. So with social media, if you like my content, you can stay and engage. If you don't, you can keep scrolling. And I can't handhold you. But when you're a university teacher and someone's taking your required class or whatever, there's these people that may not enjoy your subject, who you still have to help through, handhold. I'm, I very much enjoy it, but I'm also I only can help you if you can help yourself kind of person.
Sure.
So it makes that aspect a little weird for me. So, I don't know if there's something out there for me, how I can address it, but I'm still working on it.
Well, I mean, and that was actually going to be my next point, that you've actually built up quite a following on social media, and I've seen a lot of your content, and it's really, really good. So, I mean, like, how did you get started in that? Let's start there, right? Like, how did you get started with social media in general?
No, it's a good question. Social media has always been kind of weird to me in terms of how I wanted to approach it and pursue it. And honestly, I started social media in other aspects because I didn't think the science and education stuff would be that, exciting. And so I really started with like financial stuff because I really also had this like passion
No,
with finances and investing and real estate and all that. But I didn't have any like education. And so I kind of did the whole YouTube university, learned a bunch of stuff myself. And then would kind of like, I started by like posting some of the things that I learned about finance stuff online. And I did this years ago, and I would try to start up little businesses here and there. I ended up getting into real estate. I bought a rental property, like all kind of stuff like that. Um, and that's what started. But then my burnout for that, because it didn't feel that exciting to me to talk about, it happened pretty quickly. And so I just
sure,
ended up kind of abandoning social media. And then years later, I was like, I feel like there's something still there for me. I don't know how to really approach it, but the only thing that I'm like, everyone says, if you want to be on social media, talk about something you enjoy. Otherwise, you're going to get the burnout. And like, I liked
sure,
finance stuff, but it wasn't enough. I got burnout. And the only thing that I ever truly enjoyed in terms of what I felt like I was good at was science. And so what ended up happening is I had a couple people that I saw. One was a person, a colleague, or somebody I went to college with. She was posting online, and she was in grad school getting her PhD. Um, and I saw her kind of growing. And I said, I talked to her and asked her about social media and how it went. She would tell me the ups and downs about it, but was telling me it was possible. And then eventually, she kind of stopped once she finished and graduated, got her PhD. She got a nice paying job. And she said, like, that there's a con of there is some toxicity on social media. She wasn't a big fan of that. And so once she graduated and had the life she wanted, she kind of stopped doing social media. But she was a big motivation at the beginning. And then I ran into at a conference. I didn't even know this person was on social media at the time. but it was another grad student at this one event that I was at. And we got to talking about our research projects and all that. And then later on, when I was scrolling online, they popped up on my feed. I was like, oh, I just met them. That's interesting. And I saw they had like 40 something thousand followers on Instagram. I'm like, oh, they're a big deal. Like I had no idea. Um, and I reached out and asked them about their experience, and they kind of gave me a little bit about it. And so I decided after that conference, it was November 2023. It was the Autumn Immunology Conference. I think her name's Angela too. I'd shout out Angela. After that, in January, I said, all right, I'm going to start posting. I said, I don't know exactly what I'm going to talk about. What is that?
Like a little over a year ago. Not too long
Yeah,
ago.
so it was in January 2024 is when I first decided I'm going to just start posting. And I'm going to talk about science. And I'm going to just post once a day, bare minimum, once a day, every day for a year. And my goal is to show myself I can be consistent. And two, see if I can hit 10,000 followers by the end of the year. And that was just on TikTok. I was just on TikTok. So it just became something where after a while, I didn't too much care about the numbers. I was just trying to find things that were interesting, engaging, and I wanted to put a spin on things to where I wanted to feel kind of cool to learn. Like I feel like a lot of people who learn feel like it's not cool, which some stuff is not cool. But I wanted to incorporate a lot of humor, a lot of jokes, a lot of like informal lessons to make it feel much more comfortable and not too high level, because I feel like a lot of science jargon just goes over people's heads and it doesn't feel too engaging. So I wanted to address that while making it entertaining and easier to digest. And so then I made my content around three different ideas. One was the science itself. One was navigating PhD program. And then the last part would be about diversity in science and what it meant to be a diverse candidate. And so I incorporated these three topics and just tried to make content around these things. And I stuck with it for a year, over a year now. And it's a slow burn as you learn what's good and what's not, what works and what doesn't. I'm still learning to this day, all that stuff. But eventually, with consistency, I start figuring out how this stuff works. And I'm starting to learn a lot more. I'd say I'm in a much further place now than I was at the start of knowing what people like to see versus what they don't like to see, what's entertaining and educational, what's helpful, and all that stuff. So that was kind of my start. I saw people that did it. I had some background in it trying to do other things. And then I finally said, I'm going to do something that I feel actually passionate about. And then once I started doing something I like in science, it didn't feel like I was working on something difficult anymore. It felt easy to make the content because I enjoyed what I was making. And I was kind of like refreshing my memory on a lot of the topics I learned early on in grad school. And so it was kind of fun to revisit a lot of that stuff, relearn a lot of that stuff. So it ended up making something become a passion project for me. It was something that just felt fun. And I think a problem with a lot of people is like they look at the money aspect. Even now, like people ask me about money, if I'm making money on social media. Yes, I do. Not a lot. It's nothing crazy. But I feel like that's a big focus by people who look at social media and they don't think about if you never made $1 from it, would you still be willing to keep posting every day for the rest of your life on this topic? And that's how I feel about this topic right now. It's the stuff that I'm doing. I would be okay posting every day if I never got paid for it.
And that's what I think, makes it successful because, it's the consistency, like you said. I think that's a key. And, but I also think that there are so many people who you can tell post content just for the clickbait, just to try to make money, just to say how many eyeballs or likes or whatever can I get on this. But I do think that long term, the people who are successful are the ones who you can tell are either passionate about what they're doing or like they enjoy it, they know what they're talking about. I think that's really important too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there are so many posts that I make that I know for a fact that we're not going to do well. But
Mhm.
if you're going to do a post that you know is not going to do well, why even do it? It's because I know those posts will hone in specifically on the target audience that I want to see it. The
Mhm.
post is not going to resonate. It's not going to be super viral or trendy. But the people who really want the education are going to pay attention to it. And so I spend more time on those posts than I would ever spend on the posts that I know are going to be trendy or viral. And I'm getting to the point where I could tell what's going to blow up and be a trendy post, but I'm not
Yeah,
trying to just constantly post nonstop
sure.
trendy viral posts because those aren't going to be the very factual, evidence based, research type of things that I really want to talk about. So it's a balance of like trying to find the trendy viral things to reach a broader audience. But then once you have the audience, putting out a lot of that actual content that's factual, shows your true self, shows what you're into,
Yeah,
stuff like that. So
I love
it's a balance, but that's the fun part
that.
about it. So,
Yeah. So I guess a good place to end off, like what would you give, like what kind of advice would you give to other people in the science field that may be looking to do the same thing, like on social media? Like what advice would you give them to get started?
yeah, I think for people wanting to get on to social media, I have to say one, I think science communication is becoming more and more important today than it's ever been before. And I think one of the biggest downfalls of the scientific community is the science communication, honestly.
Yeah.
I think too many people think on a high level, which is fine. That's what you spent so much time of your career learning and figuring out that it's almost like once you hit a certain point, you kind of just forget that there's a certain group of people that will never understand or you don't care about them anymore. And then so scientists are only communicating to other scientists. But the reality is science is made for everyone and it's designed so that everyone should be able to understand it. Because the reality
Okay.
is one of the concerns that we're having now in the world is that science has just become this thing that turned into just a trust me, bro kind of conversation. Like a
Yeah.
scientist said, I did the work, so just trust me, it works. And the
Yeah.
reality is now people are getting angry because they don't want to just trust you. They want to know
Right.
for themselves what's going on.
About understand it.
Exactly. But the terminology is getting so advanced that it just pushes people away from wanting to understand it. So instead, they just distrust it right away because they can't understand it. And so I think science communication is necessary for people to be able to express to people what's really going on. How do things really work? What's the necessary things you need to understand with the amount of education you have to still make effective decisions for your life? And so science communicators, I think one, there's an aspect of like how to do science in the first place or how to communicate science in the first place. And it doesn't have to
Hmm.
be social media. It could be all kind of outlets. Someone could have a blog, someone could write newsletters, someone could work for a company that puts out articles, like any form of communication. Um, whichever form people decide to do, I think at that point, you have to really think about who's the audience. So when you're making, in my term, content, think about who the audience is. If you're writing an article or making a post, say, who am I actually addressing in this post? What's their education level? What will they understand? What's too far? And then once you figure that out, then you design everything based off of, is this information pertinent for what they would know? And will it make sense to them? Um, I think that's the basis for how science communication should start is, do we actually know who we're addressing or we're talking? If you're talking to high level scientists, speak on a high level, matter. But if you're talking to someone who works in business, they're not going to understand all these high
Yes.
level science terms. So talk to them in a basis, or at least give them enough background so they understand. Um, and then beyond that, I think, and I mentioned for me, if it's something like social media, consistency matters more than anything. And this is like a universal thing. And I've learned it
Mhm.
best through content creation. But anything that
Mhm.
you're consistent in, you will be successful in.
Yeah,
People that go to the gym consistently get the best results. People that go to
of
class
course.
consistently are the best students. People that show up at work every day usually end up being the best workers. Like the
Mhm.
consistency matters the most for anything you do. And some people say, well, I heard you don't have to do it every day. If you're just having high quality, then it's the best content. If you produce hot, like if you're a chef, if you make high quality meals, people love it. But you don't learn how to cook on day one and just go, all right, I'm only going to cook when I'm making high quality meals. You have to practice cooking every
Sure.
day, every other day
Mhm.
before you
It's a
figure
good
out how to.
analogy. Yeah.
Exactly. Uh, and so I do think quality matters. I think quality is most important, but I don't think you get there unless you are consistently doing it, because otherwise you'll never learn what's a mistake. You'll never learn what works. You'll never learn how to adjust and manage all of the specifics. And so for stuff like this, I think consistently figuring out what you want to do and then doing it consistently. And it doesn't have to be every day, but something that you can maintain, that you do repetitively, that becomes just part of your routine.
So
Um,
what tips do you have to give people? Because I mean, it seems like it takes so much time, right? Especially if you're going for your PhD, right? The fact that you're able to do all this content is absolutely amazing to me. So I would say that would probably be the number one comment that people would say, right? It's like as they're
Mhm.
studying and working, how do they get around the time factor?
The reality is, I think everyone always has time in their day. They tell themselves they don't. I know I have
Mhm.
time in my day to do everything I need to do, but I tell myself I don't. Maybe I'm tired. Maybe I'm hungry and I want to go eat. Maybe friends are asking me to hang out. Maybe I don't realize how much time I actually need to dedicate to one task versus another. But I think what really comes down to is telling yourself how to carve out time effectively. So, and I didn't do this purposely, but I post every post that I have late at night. Every time, it's rare that I don't post late at night. Now I'm going off the Central Standard Time, but if people look, every time I post, my content usually happens between 10 p.m. and 12 p.m. or 12 a.m. at night. That's not on purpose. it's just a, it's
Because
just
you
a
have time
fact.
to
Exactly. I usually just in my life, I usually get to my day is busy, and then it gets to about 10 o'clock, and then my partner she's sleep, so I'm not having my dog is asleep. There's no distractions. There's nothing else around, and that's the time. And I tell myself I have to post every day, so I can't finish a day mentally. I tell myself I can't finish a day without posting. So that means I have a hard cutoff, which is 12 a.m. I need to
take.
post before 12 a.m. And so between 10 and 12 is the time where I say, okay, I haven't put anything out yet. I have to put something out. And so accidentally, I somehow carved out time in my day to where between 10 and 12, I need to have a video idea. I need to film it. I need to edit it, and I need to post it. Um, I wouldn't say it's the best system because it
It works for
some
you.
it works for me. But sometimes it can be real stressful because it could be 11:30 at night, and I'm saying I have 30 minutes left to come up with an idea, film and post it, and film, edit, and post it. And I start going through this panic mode of like trying to figure out what to
Well,
do. But
those are the
it,
viral days, right?
yes, yeah, those are the viral days. It's a 10-second video with some text on screen. And I'm sure some people might be able to notice. They don't know that's the reasoning, but there's posts that I have that are quick, and a lot of times I have quick posts set up just for when I can't think. It takes me like a good talking video that's a minute to 3 minutes long takes me about an hour to film, post, edit, post, all that. So it takes me about an hour to do that. If I don't have an hour and I still want to post it before 12, that's when I start doing those quick, whatever
Mhm.
topics. But I say all that's to say, like, the consistency for me became accidental because I set up system. Our system was I need something out before 12 a.m. And no matter what, I have to figure it out. So I can post early in the day, but usually just for my life, everything got quiet around 10 o'clock at night. And that was the only time I had where I could close the office door, I can set up my tripod, and I can film. I can speak as loud as I want because everyone else in the house is asleep. And then I can have my bright lights on because I closed the door, so I'm not distracting anyone. And now it just naturally worked out that way. So I think advice for other people is finding out how to carve out that specific amount of time. If it's just a lunch break at work, like someone has 30 minutes at work, and you can use 15 minutes of that to film and then maybe another 15 minutes later in the day to edit and post, make it work however it works. But I think it comes down to figuring out what time works, because I guarantee everyone has at least 15 to 30 minutes in their day
Sure. We
somewhere
make
in the
time
day.
for what we want to make time for, is what it comes
Exactly.
down to. And
Exactly.
we do have a question. Do you have a strategy on what you want to post, or do you just think of something on the fly?
Um, I have a vague strategy that I'm trying to be better about so things aren't as random as they are right now. I talked about earlier with the three content pillars, I like to call them, that I talk about, which is the science itself, navigating PhD programs, and then talking about diversity in science. And those things are, which the last one was becoming a lot more problematic lately, which that one I'm still trying to navigate how exactly I want to approach talking about diversity in sciences. Um,
Problematic.
uh, the government
The government
and
absolutely.
the current climate is not a fan of any topics that
Yeah.
introduce the word diversity. Um,
A lot of other
and
related or very
y-
loosely related words.
yes.
Yeah.
And so it makes it, well, quite frankly, the people that it has now generated the most toxicity around the concept that I talk about. Um, I am not afraid of hate comments and toxicity, and I can fully combat. I think I perfected the witty comments. I think my comebacks are wonderful. Not everyone's going to agree, but I think I'm pretty good. But it's come with a territory of hatred now on a lot of those topics.
Mhm.
So it's become a lot more difficult. Whereas to me, the reason I got into science or research, I should say, in the first place was through a diversity program. I would have never known what research was or how to even get into a research lab without that program. So it's a big part of
Yeah.
my story that I like to share. But now it just feels like people hate that entire part of my story. But there's also a lot of people that love it. And so
Sure.
in my mind, whenever I talk about that, I know for a fact it's going to split on who really likes me and likes my content and who I am, and the people that are not want to follow me. But I'm okay with that because I don't want those people. um,
Exactly.
yeah. But to the question, I have those three pillars, and I
Yeah.
try to design at least like 20 to 25% of my content around each of those pillars. So that's about 75%. And then the last 25% might be just to test new ideas and new topics.
Hmm.
I'm getting to a point where, like, I'm not saying the science is boring to talk about. I still enjoy it, but I kind of want more. So I'm gonna start dedicating a little bit of that 25% toward what I think is gonna be like social media content creation tips or science communicators. Is it what I think I'm
That's good.
going to now start approaching? Um, so that way I always have topics to talk about. And if there's ever a day where I'm like, oh, I don't know what I should post, I can just reference one of those three or four topics, and then just say, can I come up with something about those three or four topics? And that keeps me consistent. I'm still talking about the same stuff. I always can come up with something. If I can't, I can literally just type in my ideas or my pillars into ChatGPT and say, give me a video idea. And
Mhm.
it can help me out.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. And so, but quite honestly, almost everything I post is on the fly. I come up with ideas. Maybe I get an idea earlier or something that sparks an idea, and I'll try to write a note in my phone so I remember it, and I come back to it later. I'm like, it's literally a page of notes that just says TikTok idea, and it's crazy long. But most of my ideas are like something I thought of in that 2 hour span that I have at the end of the day. or I'll say like, here's a topic I've been meaning to talk about. Like I've been meaning to talk about autoimmune gastritis lately. And so sometime this week, I'm going to film a video talking more about autoimmune gastritis. Um, and from there can stem several different video ideas. So one is just simply a video on, because I think too many people think your video has to have everything in it. It does not. One video is just going to talk about autoimmune gastritis and what it is. And then from there, I can say, how does it affect people? Is a second video. A third video is what are some remedies or cures or things that are being tested to help that. And then the fourth video could be what can you do now in your personal life to over time prevent that autoimmune gastritis from turning into eventual cancer or something worse. And then a fifth video could be how can you even get cancer from autoimmune gastritis? That's 5 video topics from one topic that I came up with, which was just autoimmune gastritis. So,
And it's great for 2 reasons. One, it gives you get to stretch out the content, but it's also more digestible.
yes,
Especially,
absolutely.
for things like Reels or TikToks, something like more like a course or something more like this or whatever is meant to be more for people who want to watch it more. But for, people extension, if you're on Instagram or you're on Reels, like you don't want to watch something that's more than like a
Exactly.
minute or 2.
A 10-minute video on all those things, no one's going to want to watch that. Even on YouTube, it's kind of boring for a 10-minute topic. But some quick, witty humor thrown into a 1-minute, 30-second video with some data points here and there that show things, it becomes more engaging. And then you can just break that into 4 to 5 videos. And that's how I usually approach it. I come up with a topic on the fly, but then once I have a topic, I say, how many ideas can I actually run with from just this one topic? Wow.
It's smart. I love it. And I love the whole, like, I love science and education. I mean, that's, obviously why I'm doing this, and everything.
Absolutely.
I love that. I just love the idea of bringing science in a more digestible way. I do think that, as a society, we do need to be getting smarter. And I like the idea of putting these, somewhat complicated but important topics into digestible pieces. That's why I think Neil deGrasse Tyson, he's like, I'm a huge fan of his, like him, Bill Nye. Some people they're so powerful because they make it interesting and exciting for kids, for adults. Cosmos, I still love Cosmos. I rewatched that a million times, just because it's easy to, it's exciting, it's easy to understand, it's entertaining. So I love what you're doing. I think it's great. And I hope you inspire other people to do this.
Yeah. It's funny because and it obviously, I feel like in this day is now aging just to say that you watch Bill Nye, but I grew up on watching Bill Nye videos, and it's funny to me now being like, I'm trying to figure out in my mind, what is the 2020s version of what Bill Nye was to me back in the early 2000s? And how can I replicate that level of entertainment? Because to me, that was the best part of class. And you're in 3rd, 4th grade, and they put it on the TV and watching Bill Nye and doing all these fun science experiments. And it's just like, how do you replicate that level of fun? Or like you said with Neil deGrasse Tyson, it's like, the reality is the stuff that he talks about is super high level. But it's something about space and physics and all the stuff that I feel like still draws people in, that it becomes a really interesting topic. And then he does it in those quick, they do podcasts, but then they clip them into 30 seconds to a minute clips that it's like, oh, this is kind of interesting. I want to learn more. And so I feel like, granted, I'm not trying to do the same style, but it's very much the motivation now. How can I be a Bill Nye of this generation?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also bringing it to like using analogies that people can understand. Like one thing that sticks in my head is I remember he was talking about how hot it is on Venus, and I think he was saying something like you could cook a pizza pie in something like 0.02 seconds or something. Like that's how hot it is, and just putting it into a way that people kind of resonates with people. I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, I think the analogies are the best way to teach. And so I'm trying to, I try out analogies here, and I'm trying to be a master analogy user in a lot of my videos. So I'm trying to perfect my craft there. But I feel like those are the most fun ways. And then I feel like there's a lot of common analogies that people hear. So like people talk about like the immune system, for example. People talk about it always like in a military aspect. We have soldiers fighting off blah blah blah. And so
Hmm.
I like to try to make it different. Like, let me think of a
Hmm.
different analogy that still gets the same message across, but it provides a new, memorable aspect. Because people will hear the soldier one on the immune system fighting soldiers. But if you hear, like, I told my lab mate who graduated recently, hers was a garden and different pesticides, things that were attacking the different flower bed that you had. How some of them represent different organs, like it was a fun little spin on these analogies.
Yeah.
And I think that sticks because not many people think about a garden when they think about your immune system. So
Right.
uh, I think the analogies are fun one. It's a fun way to put a spin on things.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Things that people can understand. Yeah, we have a met. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's very hard. Like it's not even so hard. I also think it shows that you really know what you're doing. If you can explain something to a 5-year-old, like I've always said that, like in business, like even if like people come at me with explaining something, like whether it's like my team or something else, I say like you're saying it way too complicated. Like dumb it down as much as you can so that everybody can understand.
Mhm.
Like, and if
I
you
do
can
it
do
in
that, mhm,
yeah. I have levels that I like to say. One is imagine you're talking to someone who has basic science background but knows nothing about your topic. The other is talk as if you're talking to the best expert in the field that knows everything about your topic. And then the last
mhm.
one is grandma at dinner who has no idea what anything you're saying. How would you explain it to grandma? And if you can explain your topic to those three different kinds of people, I consider you an
Mhm.
expert on that topic.
Absolutely. And to your point, it depends, right? It all depends on who you're talking to. For the masses, you want to simplify it. If you are talking to, the Einstein of your field, you want to be able to get down and dirty and,
Hmm.
you know, and talk details.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. This has been such a great conversation. I love everything you're doing. I want to hear. I want you to keep me posted about your thesis and what's next. And for anyone watching this as a recording, you can continue to ask questions or post comments in the chat. And if you look in the description, Nick's social media handles are in there if you want to follow him as well. So thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It's wonderful.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Uh,
All right. Take care. Bye.